So imagine two companies, right? They both sell the exact same basic white T-shirt.
Okay, basic white T-shirts, got it.
Yeah, exactly. And they source the exact same quality of cotton. They sell it to you for the exact same price, like $12. And they both run these highly successful, visually identical marketing campaigns.
Right, so to anyone looking from the outside, these are basically twin businesses.
Exactly. They look identical, yet, 6 months later, one of them is this massive billion-dollar empire expanding globally, and the other one is completely bankrupt and liquidating everything.
Wow, that is a brutal difference.
Right. And so you have to ask why, because the answer isn't in the cotton, and, it isn't in the marketing. It's actually in the invisible matrix of their supply chain architecture.
Yeah, it's all about the operational reality that is just completely hidden beneath the surface.
Yes, exactly.
Looking at the material we have today, it's honestly like looking at the load-bearing walls of a skyscraper.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Because, as customers, we only ever see the nice lobby, right?
Okay.
We just see the finished T-shirt on a shelf or that really slick app interface.
Right, the shiny stuff.
Exactly. But the text we are diving into today shows you exactly where the steel beams are actually placed to stop the entire business from just, collapsing under its own weight.
That is the absolute perfect way to frame this. So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are taking a sledgehammer to the drywall to look at those steel beams.
Am I ready?
We are working through a really dense, incredibly comprehensive stack of source material. It's an internal presentation titled APC's CPIMM 2026 Mod 1, and we're specifically zeroing in on Module 1, Section C.
Which is a beast of a section, honestly.
It really is. It covers developing and managing strategy at all these various levels of an organization. And our mission today is to basically extract the ultimate blueprint for how companies develop, align, and then actually execute a strategy.
Right, because we want to help you understand that complex hidden machinery that gets a product from just being a raw material all the way to your shopping cart.
Exactly. And, why getting just one single gear in that machine wrong can completely destroy a company.
Yeah, and I think the overarching theme of this whole source material is that strategy is absolutely not a philosophical exercise.
No, not at all.
It is a physical, a geographical, and honestly, a psychological alignment.
Right.
If your high-level corporate strategy dictates one thing, but say your factory floor layout or your middle management bonus structures dictate another, you just fail.
You fail, exactly. And before a company can even think about, executing some grand world-conquering strategy, they need to know what actually gets them invited to the game in the first place.
Right, you need a ticket to play.
Yes. And the source text establishes this baseline of competition with two really critical concepts, which are order qualifiers and order winners.
So, to continue your T-shirt analogy from earlier, you can't win the market if your shirt just unravels after a single wash.
Exactly. No one is buying that twice.
Right. And that brings us to the definition of an order qualifier. It is literally the bare minimum capability, or like the basic feature a firm has to exhibit just to be a viable competitor.
It just gets you on the short list.
Exactly. An order winner, on the other hand, is the specific attribute that causes a customer to actually choose your product over all those other viable options.
Okay, the textbook definition makes total sense. But what really caught my attention in the source is how dynamic these two concepts are.
Oh, they change constantly.
Yeah. The text explicitly notes that winners tend to become qualifiers over time. Because, the market just doesn't sit still. Customer expectations are constantly drifting upward.
They really are. Backup cameras in vehicles are like the classic illustration of this mechanism.
Oh, yeah, that's a great example.
Because think about it, maybe 15 years ago, a backup camera was a massive order winner. You would willingly pay this huge premium technology package fee for it.
Or you'd specifically seek out a luxury brand just to get it.
Exactly. And the automakers who offered it captured a ton of market share just because of that one specific feature. But today, the mechanism of customer expectation has just completely shifted.
It's totally different now.
Yeah. If you test drive a brand new car today and it lacks a backup camera, you don't just refuse to pay a premium.
You just refuse to buy the car entirely.
Exactly. It no longer wins the order. It merely qualifies the car for your consideration.
Free shipping is another brutal example of this drift. I remember when getting something shipped for free in 2 days was the ultimate order winner. It felt like actual magic.
Oh, absolutely. It was revolutionary.
But now if an online retailer doesn't offer it, I'm just, I'm closing the tab and going somewhere else.
Right. It shifted from a premium special service to just a baseline qualifier, which honestly forces the company to absorb massive logistical costs just to stay in the game.
It really does. And this evolution of customer expectations maps perfectly onto what the text calls the product life cycle.
Yeah, the life cycle matrix.
Right. And the source breaks this cycle down into 4 distinct phases. So you've got introduction, growth, maturity, and decline.
And the crazy thing is, your entire supply chain has to physically restructure itself as your product moves through those phases.
Because the order qualifiers and order winners shift so radically.
Exactly.
So let's trace a product through that matrix.
True.
In the introduction phase, the customers are the innovators, the early risk takers.
The people waiting in line overnight for a new gadget.
Right. And according to the text, the qualifiers here are quality and flexibility, but the order winner is simply meeting the actual specifications.
Because the technology or the product is entirely novel. I mean, if you are buying the very first commercial virtual reality headset, you don't really care if it's slightly expensive.
Or if it takes like a month to ship.
Exactly. You just want to know that when you finally put it on your head, it actually works without making you violently ill. Meeting the basic promise of the innovation is the winner.
And the operational reality of that is just fascinating. The text links the life cycle directly to manufacturing types. In this introduction phase, a company is often using what's called an engineer-to-order or ETO capability.
Yeah, so let's explain the physical reality of an ETO environment for a second.
Please do.
Engineer-to-order means you are essentially designing and building the product simultaneously, based on highly specific customer requirements.
So like a custom architecture firm?
Yes, or an aerospace company building a totally new type of experimental drone.
Yeah.
The physical layout of this environment is often just a messy workshop.
Right, lots of blueprints everywhere.
Exactly. You have highly skilled, really expensive labor. You're dealing with bespoke parts. You absolutely cannot achieve economies of scale here.
It's slow, it's highly flexible, and it is incredibly expensive per unit.
But that is acceptable, right? Because your order winner is just meeting that novel specification.
Okay, but then the product catches on. We move into the growth phase. The early adopters arrive. Now, the text says the qualifiers shift to cost and flexibility, and the new order winner becomes dependability.
Right.
But why the sudden shift to dependability?
Because competitors have smelled the profit and they've entered the market. The novelty is gone. People know the virtual reality headset actually works.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So now imagine a corporate buyer wants to purchase 500 of them for a training program. They aren't going to buy from that messy workshop that might maybe deliver them in 6 months.
No, they want a guarantee.
Exactly. They want to know that if they place the order, the product will arrive exactly when promised, and it will function consistently. Dependability wins the contract.
Which I imagine forces the company to abandon that messy engineer-to-order model entirely.
They absolutely have to. They have to transition to make-to-order or MTO.
Okay, so what does that look like?
Well, they have standardized the design. They might have standard components sitting ready, but they wait for the customer's firm order before doing the final assembly.
So they are trading away some of that infinite flexibility from the early days to gain speed and reliability.
Exactly. Which brings us to the maturity phase.
The bulk of the market. The product is everywhere now. The text states the qualifiers here are quality and product range, so basically flexibility.
Right.
But the order winners are cost and dependability.
Because the market is entirely saturated at this point. The core technology is basically commoditized. You can no longer win simply by having the product.
Or even by being the only dependable supplier, right?
Exactly. You win by being the absolute most reliable provider at the absolute most aggressive price point.
I look at this progression and it totally reminds me of a rock band's career arc.
A rock band. Okay, I'm intrigued.
Stick with me on this. So at the very beginning, the introduction phase, they are playing a totally new sound in a garage. Just the fact that they have a unique sound and they manage to actually show up to the gig, so meeting the specifications, is the winner.
Right.
They are essentially engineer to order. Every single show is chaotic and bespoke and different.
I like this. And as they enter the growth phase?
Well, the early adopters find them. They start booking regional tours. Now, they need to be dependable. They can't show up 4 hours late and play half a set while hungover.
Right. The fans want the new sound, but they expect a professional show.
Exactly. That aligns perfectly with the shift to dependability as the order winner. Then they hit maturity.
Okay, so what's maturity for the band?
They're playing massive stadiums. Everyone knows who they are. The qualifiers are having a huge product range, meaning they literally have to play a 3-hour set covering all the hits.
Okay, yeah.
But to actually win your ticket money over the other 6 stadium tours happening that summer, they need to offer a dependable, spectacular, predictable show at a competitive ticket price.
So they have moved entirely into a make-to-stock model?
Exactly. The set list is locked. The pyrotechnics are timed to the millisecond. There is zero flexibility, but the cost per fan is optimized.
That is amazing. And finally, the decline phase.
The county fair circuit, the legacy tours, the late adopters, or the people just wanting a replacement for a nostalgic memory.
Right.
The qualifier is that they still sound vaguely like themselves, but the absolute ultimate winner is cost. You just want a cheap $20 ticket to sit on the lawn and hear the one song you remember from high school.
Okay, that is a surprisingly robust analogy. I really like that.
Thanks.
And honestly, it highlights the central thesis of this section of the source text perfectly.
How so?
Well, if your internal manufacturing capability is mismatched with your external market reality, you fail.
Right.
Like if a legacy rock band tries to charge premium stadium prices while playing experimental, bespoke garage rock improvisations to a crowd that just wants cheap nostalgia.
They will get booed off the stage.
Exactly. And in supply chain terms, if you try to run an engineer-to-order facility for a commoditized product that's in the decline phase, your cost structure will literally bleed you dry.
You just can't sustain it.
No. You must use make-to-stock to survive that phase. You build inventory efficiently in massive batches to drive the unit cost down to pennies.
Right. And all of this underlying theory, it builds up to what might be the most vital operational concept in the entire source document.
The push-pull frontier.
Yes, the push-pull frontier. The text provides this incredible visual timeline, and it moves horizontally from left to right.
Okay.
It starts with the raw material suppliers, moves to the manufacturers, through the distributors, the wholesalers, the retailers, and finally ends on the far right with the end customers.
And the push-pull frontier is the exact physical and temporal location within that timeline where a product transitions from being built based on a forecast to being built based on a guarantee.
It is literally the dividing line between guessing and knowing.
That's exactly what it is.
So let's ground this for a second. Push means the supply chain is forecast-driven. You are literally pushing products down the chain.
Right.
You are procuring materials, you're running machines, loading trucks, all before a customer has ever even swiped a credit card.
You are just hoping they will buy it based on historical sales data or market research or, sometimes pure intuition.
Exactly. Pull, on the other hand, is entirely demand-driven. You are manufacturing a component or moving a box from a warehouse precisely because a customer initiated an order.
The customer's demand is actively pulling the product toward them.
Right. And to visualize this, I think of a standard fast food drive-thru.
Oh, that's a good one.
Like if I pull up and order a double cheeseburger with no pickles, and the kitchen staff assembles it right then based on my voice coming through the speaker. Well, that specific assembly process is a pull system.
Yes, because you demanded it.
Right. But the frozen beef patties sitting in the walk-in freezer, those were pushed there.
Exactly. A manager looked at a spreadsheet of last month's sales. They forecasted that they would need 1,000 patties this week, and they pushed an order to a distributor to truck them in.
And the boundary between the pushed frozen patties and the pulled assembled burger is the push-pull frontier.
Yes. And the source text makes a profound assertion here, which is that combining the location of your push-pull frontier with your identified order winners creates the absolute strongest determinant of your entire manufacturing strategy.
Wait, how does that play out in the real world? Like, give me an example.
Well, okay, if I'm selling high-end, completely bespoke, tailored suits, my order winner is extreme customization and perfect fit.
Right, yeah, obviously.
So I cannot push fully finished suits to a retail rack and just pray a guy with those exact, highly unusual dimensions happens to walk in.
Oh, man, if you attempt that, you will just drown in unsold, useless inventory.
Exactly. For a bespoke suit, your push-pull frontier has to reside way, way back at the raw material supplier level.
Okay, I see.
You push bolts of uncut wool and silk to your tailor shop. That is where the push stops. The moment the customer walks in and gets measured, the pull begins. You cut, sew, and assemble based on a guaranteed, highly profitable order.
But if I'm selling that $12 basic white t-shirt we talked about at the very beginning of the show...
It's a totally different story.
Right, because my order winner is pure low cost and instant, immediate availability. If a guy walks into a big box store, he wants the shirt in his hand immediately.
Yeah, if it's not on the shelf, he just buys a competitor's shirt.
Exactly. So in that scenario, your push-pull frontier is pushed all the way down the timeline to the absolute end, the retail shelf itself.
Yes, you must push thousands of shirts through the global network, weaving them, shipping them across oceans, and stocking them in local stores based entirely on forecasts.
Because they just have to be waiting there the exact second the customer experiences the impulse to pull the shirt into their cart.
Exactly. The risk profile flips entirely between the two models.
How so?
Well, the tailor risks losing a customer who is too impatient to wait 3 weeks for a suit. But the t-shirt company, they risk forecasting poorly and ending up with 3 million unsold shirts sitting in a warehouse somewhere, tying up all their capital and destroying their profit margin.
Wow. This realization that you have to deliberately design exactly where this frontier sits based on what wins the order, it just forces a company to make really hard choices.
You cannot have it all.
No, you cannot have a supply chain that provides bespoke, tailored customization with the immediate availability and low cost of a mass-produced t-shirt. You literally have to pick a battlefield.
You must decide exactly how you are going to compete.
Which transitions us perfectly into Michael Porter's generic competitive strategies, which is detailed pretty heavily in the source.
Yes, this is the classic framework for picking that battlefield.
Right, and the text outlines this as a 2x2 matrix. On one axis, you define your competitive advantage. So are you competing primarily on driving down cost, or are you competing on offering unique differentiation? And then on the other axis, you define your market focus. Are you targeting a broad mass market audience or a narrow niche audience?
And mapping this out is so crucial because it dictates literally every subsequent supply chain decision you make.
Yes, it trickles down to everything.
Right. And to make this matrix concrete, let's look at the commercial airline industry. It perfectly illustrates all 4 corners of Porter's matrix, plus the hybrid strategy right in the middle.
Oh, airlines are a great example. Let's start with the top left quadrant, the broad, low-cost provider strategy.
Okay, so the value proposition here is blunt. You offer a service to a massive audience, and your singular advantage is being cheaper than everyone else.
Right. So in the airline world, this is Ryanair in Europe, or like Spirit Airlines in the US.
Exactly. And the source notes 2 paths to profitability here. You can either sell massive volumes with razor-thin margins, or you can severely slash your operating costs to maintain higher margins at lower volumes.
The low-cost airlines definitely take that former approach, high volume.
Yeah, but the operational discipline required to actually execute this is punishing. You cannot just declare you are the cheapest. Your entire supply chain must reflect it.
Right, so how does an airline actually execute that on a physical level?
Well, they ruthlessly omit needless processes. For example, they fly only one type of aircraft, say the Boeing 737.
Oh, so they don't have a mixed fleet.
Right. And that means they only need to train mechanics on one engine type. They only need to stock spare parts for one specific plane. Their pilots can fly any route.
That's incredibly efficient.
Exactly. Also, they don't offer free meals, which means they don't need expensive catering logistics or heavy galleys on the plane, which saves a ton of fuel.
And they turn the planes around at the gate in, what, 20 minutes?
Yeah, to maximize asset utilization.
Yeah.
Every single physical decision is slave to the goal of cost reduction.
But the text points out some pretty massive inherent risks in this strategy.
Oh, Hess.
Because you are constantly vulnerable to profit margin erosion through price wars. I mean, if your only competitive moat is just being cheap, a rival with deeper cash reserves can always come along and bleed you out by undercutting your prices.
That happens all the time.
Yeah. And furthermore, if the macroeconomic environment shifts, say, we enter a booming economy where passengers suddenly prioritize comfort over saving $50, you have no capability to pivot.
Right, your planes literally do not have first-class seats to sell.
Exactly. So that vulnerability leads us to the top right quadrant of the matrix, the broad differentiation strategy.
Right, and here you are serving that exact same massive broad market, but your competitive advantage is communicating features or quality or services that your rivals cannot easily replicate.
Okay, so in our airline analogy, this is Emirates or Delta Airlines.
Yes, they aren't trying to be the absolute cheapest option.
Yeah.
They are competing on superior customer service, broader global route networks, more comfortable cabins, better reliability.
But to achieve this, the entire value chain has to be re-engineered away from pure cost-cutting and heavily toward value creation.
Exactly. Delta invests heavily in its proprietary app, it's airport lounges, and it's customer recovery logistics.
Customer recovery.
Yeah, so if a flight is canceled, their system automatically rebooks you and issues meal vouchers immediately. That back-end software architecture and the human customer service capability costs a fortune to build and maintain.
I look at the risks the text outlines for differentiation, though, and the biggest one seems to be the danger of, quote, costly differences with no additional value to buyers.
Oh, it is a devastating trap.
How so?
Well, imagine an airline spends $200 million developing this revolutionary new type of heavily engineered, super ergonomic tray table.
Okay, a fancy tray table.
Right. And they have to raise ticket prices by $10 across the board just to cover the R&D and the manufacturing costs. But the customer books the flight, sits down, looks at the tray table, and simply doesn't care.
They perceive zero added value.
Exactly. The airline has structurally increased its supply chain costs without increasing its pricing power one bit. The market punishes them immediately.
Wow. Okay, let's move to the bottom row of Porter's matrix. The focus strategies.
Right, the niche strategies.
Yes. This involves taking either the low-cost approach or the differentiation approach, but applying it to a highly specific, very narrow market niche. You are intentionally shrinking your sandbox to limit the number of rivals you actually have to wait.
So a focused differentiation strategy in aviation would be a private jet charter company that caters exclusively to ultra-high net worth corporate executives.
They aren't competing with Delta for vacationers going to Florida.
Not at all.
Yeah.
They are tailoring their entire operational footprint using small regional airports, offering bespoke catering, guaranteeing wheels up in 2 hours to a tiny fraction of the population.
Or, going back to manufacturing, it's a difference between Apple making millions of Apple Watches for the broad market and a specialized company making incredibly rugged, high-end diving watches exclusively for professional saturation divers.
Exactly. Apple has incredible manufacturing capabilities, obviously.
No.
But they aren't going to retool their entire global supply chain to address the specific, weird requirements of a few thousand deep-sea welders.
Right. The niche is protected because it's just too small for the behemoths to care about, but it's lucrative enough for the focused company to really thrive.
But the primary risk, of course, is that the niche just disappears.
Right. If robotic welding replaces human deep-sea welders, that watch company goes to zero overnight. Their focus was just too narrow to survive a structural shift.
Precisely. Which leaves us with the center of the matrix, the hybrid approach. The source text calls this the best cost provider strategy.
And it seems like an incredibly delicate balancing act.
It really is. You're attempting to offer a better, low-cost alternative relative to competitors' offerings, usually targeting mid-range products.
So you are not the absolute cheapest, like a dollar store, but you offer significantly better quality.
Right, and you are not a luxury boutique, but you offer much better prices. Target is the quintessential example of this in retail.
Target is a perfect example. And the source text highlights that this strategy becomes highly effective during macroeconomic recessions. Why is that?
Because human psychology and economic reality kind of collide.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, during a recession, value-minded buyers experience a squeeze on their disposable income. They are forced to trade down from the expensive, broadly differentiated products.
They can't afford the luxury anymore.
Right. However, they don't want to suffer this psychological blow or the perceived lack of quality of dropping all the way down to the absolute cheapest, lowest tier options.
Ah, so the best cost provider catches them exactly in the middle.
Exactly. They offer the dignity of quality combined with the relief of economy.
That's fascinating. But the warning in the text issues here is pretty severe. If you take this route, you are choosing to fight a two-front war.
You really are. You are constantly exposed to attacks from both sides of the matrix.
Because the pure low-cost providers will constantly try to steal your price-sensitive customers by undercutting you.
Right. And while that's happening, the highly differentiated providers will launch marketing campaigns trying to convince your quality-conscious customers that your product is actually just cheap junk.
It's exhausting just thinking about it. And to solidify all this theory, the source material actually provides a brilliant practical exercise, the SIPA case study.
Ah, yes, the SIPA case.
Let's do a forensic breakdown of SIPA. So the text provides a scenario. SIPA is a branded beverage company. They command a relatively large national market share. Their revenues are growing slightly faster than their rivals, but, and this is key, they are operating in a mature, slow-growing market.
Okay, mature market.
Yep. And like their competitors, SIPA spends heavily on a massive marketing program. They utilize regional bottling operations, and they sell through diverse distribution channels.
And the exercise demands that we look at those seemingly mundane facts and basically reverse engineer their entire competitive strategy and their operational metrics.
Exactly. So what does this all mean? Let's pull the threads. First fact. It is a mature, slow-growing market. Tying that back to our product lifecycle analysis earlier, we know that in the maturity phase, the core order winners are cost and dependability.
Correct. But the second fact complicates it. SIPA is a branded beverage with a massive marketing program.
So they are clearly not a pure, generic, low-cost provider.
No, they are spending millions to differentiate themselves in the mind of the consumer.
So they are attempting a broad differentiation strategy based on brand image, but because the market is fundamentally mature and saturated, they are inevitably being dragged toward a best-cost provider strategy.
Exactly. They have to rigorously control their internal costs to fend off generic store-brand sodas while simultaneously maintaining the premium brand illusion that justifies their slightly higher price point.
Okay, now look at the physical footprint the text gives us. Regional bottling operations. This is the physical manifestation of their strategy.
Right, because why not build one gigantic mega factory to bottle all the soda for the whole country and achieve massive economies of scale?
Well, because shipping heavy liquid across an entire continent is astronomically expensive and really prone to delays.
Exactly. By bottling regionally, they dramatically cut their transportation costs, and they ensure rapid, dependable delivery to local retailers.
So they are optimizing their physical networks specifically to hit those mature market order winners, cost and dependability.
It's beautiful how the strategy reveals itself once you know the code, isn't it?
It really is. The text concludes that because of this specific setup, the absolute most critical performance measures SIPA's executives must track are tied directly to those winners.
Right. They need to relentlessly monitor cost metrics like total supply chain management cost and dependability metrics like perfect customer order fulfillment rates.
Because if either of those slip, their entire best cost strategy collapses.
It is an elegant theoretical model. But, here is the brutal reality of corporate life.
Oh boy, here we go.
It is very easy for a CEO to stand in front of a boardroom, point to a PowerPoint slide, and declare, we are now executing a best cost strategy focused on rapid regional fulfillment.
Sure, it sounds great in a meeting.
It sounds amazing. But what happens when that grand strategy trickles down the hierarchy into the individual siloed functional departments?
Absolute civil war.
Yes.
This is one of the most eye-opening sections of the text, honestly. It describes the internal battles that just destroy supply chains from the inside out. I love the terminology they use, too. Adversarial buying and departments maximizing their own metrics at the expense of others.
It reads like a description of feudal kingdoms constantly raiding each other's villages.
It really does, and it happens because of how we measure human performance. The source provides a detailed table mapping out the wildly conflicting objectives of different departments.
And what's fascinating here is how perfectly logical, rational behavior at the departmental level creates catastrophic inefficiency at the holistic supply chain level.
Let's paint a picture of this civil war for the listener. Imagine the operations manager. They run the factory floor. What do they want?
Well, they want raw materials available immediately, at all times. But more importantly, their bonus is usually tied to equipment utilization and driving down the cost per unit produced.
Therefore, the operations manager demands extremely long production runs. If they are manufacturing paint, they want to turn the machines on and run standard white for 3 weeks straight.
Right. Why? Because every single time they have to stop the line to clean the vats and switch to ocean blue, the machines sit idle.
They accumulate setup costs.
Exactly. Their efficiency metrics plummet.
But what is the systemic consequence of running one color for 3 weeks straight? Massive inventory bloat. The factory just produced a 6-month supply of white paint.
Yeah. And now they have to rent extra warehouse space just to store it. And worse, they are utterly inflexible.
Right. If a major client suddenly demands red paint, operations says, too bad, the machines are locked on white until the 15th.
Now walk down the hall to the sales and marketing department. Their reality is completely different. Their compensation is driven by maximized sales revenue and customer satisfaction.
The sales manager wants to be able to look a client in the eye and say, yes, we can ship you highly customized red paint and we can have it there by Tuesday.
But to make that promise reality, sales demands a highly flexible product mix. They constantly barrage operations with requests to interrupt the schedule, break into the production runs, and prioritize new hot orders.
Oh, I'm sure operations loves that.
Oh, they despise it. Furthermore, sales is terrified of stockouts. If a customer wants something and it isn't on the shelf, sales loses the commission.
So they demand the company hold massive safety stocks of every single color variation, just in case.
Do you see the friction? Operations wants stability, zero changeovers, and high volume of a single product to keep production costs low.
And sales wants infinite variety, constant schedule changes, and massive safety buffers to keep revenue high. They are mathematically opposed to each other.
And then, just to make it worse, the finance manager enters the arena.
Oh, finance.
Finance looks at the world entirely through the lens of the balance sheet. Their objective is maximize profit, rapid cash flow, and minimized assets.
So they walk into the warehouse and they don't see safety stock or efficient production runs.
No, they see millions of dollars of working capital trapped in buckets of paint. They see storage costs. They see the risk of the paint expiring or the market preference shifting.
So finance views inventory as an anchor dragging down the company's return on assets.
Exactly. So finance issues a mandate. Slash inventory across the board.
Which terrifies sales, who foresees immediate stockouts and lost clients.
And it infuriates operations, who relies on buffer inventories of raw materials to ensure their machines never have to stop running.
It is literally a three-way Mexican standoff. Finance is screaming, liquidate the inventory, sales is screaming, produce more variety, and operations is screaming, stop changing my schedule.
And the tragic part is, based on their individual departmental KPIs, every single one of them is right.
That is wild. This is why the source material so emphatically stresses the absolute necessity of cross-functional organization and integrated metrics.
You have to have it.
If leadership does not step in and orchestrate this, if they don't align the key performance indicators so that everyone is judged on total supply chain profitability rather than isolated departmental efficiency, the grand corporate strategy is just dead on arrival.
You have to change the rules of the game so the departments win or lose together.
And part of ending that internal civil war is taking a hard look at the activities causing the bottlenecks and asking a really fundamental question. Should we even be doing this activity at all?
Right, which leads us to the make or buy decision framework in the text.
Now, outsourcing is often viewed purely as a cost-cutting measure, but the source frames it correctly as a massive strategic risk assessment. It is about deciding what is core to your identity and what is merely a necessary distraction.
The framework provides very clear heuristics. When do you make an item or perform a process internally?
You keep it in-house if it is strategically vital, like if it requires highly specialized knowledge, proprietary skills, or if making it actively increases your core competencies and deepens your competitive moat.
Right. So let's imagine a company that manufactures high-end, championship-winning racing bicycles.
Okay.
Their entire competitive advantage, their order winner, rests on a proprietary, ultra-lightweight carbon fiber weaving technique they developed.
Oh, you absolutely do not farm that out to a third-party factory in another country. You make that in-house.
Exactly. That carbon fiber frame is the very soul of the company. Handing that over to a supplier risks losing your intellectual property and destroying your competitive advantage.
But when do you buy? When do you outsource?
Well, the text says you buy if the item is not strategic, but a failure to acquire it could pose a severe risk to your operations. More importantly, you buy if a supplier possesses unique capabilities that you simply do not have, or if their inclusion fundamentally improves your operational performance.
So, going back to the bicycle company, you jealously guard the manufacturing of the frame, but what about the rubber grips on the handlebars?
Right. Your engineers are carbon fiber geniuses, not rubber vulcanization experts.
Right.
A specialized rubber manufacturer in another state has economies of scale you could never dream of. They have unique chemical capabilities. They can produce a superior grip for a fraction of the cost.
So you buy the grips, It removes a non-core manufacturing headache from your operations manager's plate, allowing them to focus entirely on the strategic asset.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've settled the internal disputes, we know exactly what we are making, and we know exactly what we're buying from suppliers. Now, strategy meets geography.
Ah, yes.
We move to aligning the physical facility strategy, like where do we literally pour the concrete and build the actual buildings?
The source presents this as a geographic trade-off game, primarily focusing on the number and size of your sites. It contrasts the strategy of having few large sites against having many small sites.
Let's examine the physics of few large sites first. The primary advantage here is massive economies of scale.
Right. If you concentrate all your production or warehousing in one colossal, centralized mega facility, your fixed costs are spread over a massive volume of units.
You only need one management team, one advanced security system, one set of massive, highly efficient machines.
Exactly. It is significantly less costly to operate on a per-unit basis, and your inbound logistics are simplified because raw materials only have to go to one address on the map.
However, the moment the product leaves that mega facility, the disadvantages appear. Your outbound transportation costs skyrocket because you have to ship the finished product thousands of miles to reach distant customers.
And your responsiveness suffers drastically.
Which is exactly why a company might choose many small sites instead. The advantages flip.
You inherently win on transportation costs to the final customer because your facilities are physically embedded within the local markets.
And you win on customer service because you can offer same-day or next-day delivery easily.
But the text notes an intriguing tertiary advantage of many small sites: increased sales volume.
Yeah, this one made me pause initially. Why does simply having more physical sites, like adding more small retail locations in a regional market, inherently boost overall sales volume? Doesn't the market size just remain the same?
It ties directly back to our discussion on order winners and the push-pull frontier.
Oh, how so?
If the primary order winner in your market is convenience and immediate responsiveness, geographical proximity literally dictates human behavior.
Okay, give me an example.
Think of a premium coffee chain. If they build one spectacular, massive mega cafe in the exact geographic center of a state to capture economies of scale, it will fail to capture total volume.
Because people will not drive an hour out of their way for a morning latte. No matter how efficient the cafe's backroom operations are, the friction is just too high.
Exactly. But if they build 50 small, slightly less efficient cafes scattered across every neighborhood, the sheer convenience of proximity reduces the friction of the transaction.
The responsiveness literally generates new sales volume that the centralized model would have just lost entirely.
That's exactly it. And this geographical logic doesn't just apply regionally, it scales all the way up to the global level.
Right. When locating value chain activities internationally, companies face the exact same debate, categorized in the text as widespread dispersal versus focused location.
So widespread dispersal means planting facilities in many different countries. Beyond the obvious advantage of faster service to those local foreign populations, the critical strategic advantage is risk diversification.
Supply chain resilience.
Exactly. If you have all your manufacturing in one country, and that country experiences, say, a sudden wild currency devaluation or a massive natural disaster or a sudden trade embargo,
your entire global operation is paralyzed.
Right. But if your footprint is widely dispersed, you have redundant capacity. You can shift production to a facility in a different hemisphere while the crisis resolves itself.
Conversely, a focused location strategy, putting your global production hub in just one or two specific foreign locations, offers profound local advantages.
Yeah, you might choose a specific region in Taiwan because it has an incredibly deep, specialized talent pool for semiconductor engineering that exists nowhere else on Earth.
You gain those massive global economies of scale. But the text highlights something I found fascinating about this: minimized learning curve effects.
Oh, the learning tax is a very real physical phenomenon in manufacturing.
Explain that a bit more.
When you introduce a complex new product to a factory floor, the workers and engineers are slow at first. They make mistakes, yields are low.
Right, they're figuring it out.
Over time, they master the process, they discover efficiencies, and the speed dramatically increases while costs plummet. They travel down the learning curve.
Got it.
Now, if you employ a widespread dispersal strategy and have 10 different small factories around the globe, all trying to learn how to produce this new product simultaneously, you are paying that expensive learning tax 10 separate times.
You literally have 10 different teams making the same beginner mistakes.
Precisely. But if you have one massive focused location, that single workforce tackles the learning curve once. They solve the complex engineering problems, optimize the line, and master the production incredibly fast due to the concentrated volume.
That makes total sense. Okay, so let's assume a company decides the time is right to expand globally. They want to enter foreign markets. The source text outlines a spectrum of options for international expansion.
And it's not just a menu, right? It's a serious escalation of financial commitment and risk.
Right. Let's walk through a company navigating these choices. They almost always start with the safest option, exporting.
Exporting is dipping your toe in the ocean. It requires minimal capital investment and allows you to maintain absolute maximum control over your product.
You simply manufacture the goods in your existing domestic facilities and put them on a cargo ship.
Exactly. But the disadvantages become apparent really quickly. You face exorbitant shipping costs, you are entirely at the mercy of foreign tariffs, and you have severe exposure to currency exchange rate fluctuations.
Right. If your home currency suddenly strengthens, your product becomes instantly artificially expensive in the foreign market and sales just collapse.
So the company decides exporting is too volatile. They look for a deeper entry method. They consider licensing.
Licensing solves the capital investment problem, right? It requires almost zero investment.
Yeah. You find an established foreign company and grant them the legal right to manufacture and sell your product using their facilities. In return, you sit back and collect a royalty on every unit sold.
It sounds perfect, but the risk is existential.
Absolutely. You are voluntarily handing over your proprietary knowledge, your schematics, your secret recipes.
You are actively teaching a foreign entity how to replicate your business.
Exactly. Once the license expires, you may find you have essentially trained your newest, most dangerous competitor.
Yikes. And if you are a service business or a retailer, the equivalent is franchising.
Franchising allows for rapid global expansion using other people's money. You collect franchise fees.
But the trade-off is a terrifying loss of quality control.
Yes, your brand identity is your most valuable asset. If a franchisee in another country operates a filthy store or provides horrific customer service, the local population doesn't blame the franchisee, they blame your global brand.
The reputational damage can be catastrophic and bleed all the way back to your domestic operations.
So let's say the company rejects all of that. They want total, absolute control over their destiny in this new country. They choose the nuclear option, a wholly owned subsidiary.
You build it from the ground up, or you buy a local company outright. You retain complete control over every operational decision, and you keep 100% of the profits.
The downside, the financial investment is gargantuan. And more dangerously, the risk of cultural conflict is extremely high. You are a foreign corporate entity parachuting into a different culture, trying to navigate local labor laws, unwritten supplier networks, and consumer nuances without any embedded local knowledge.
The hubris of this subsidiary model has bankrupted so many overconfident companies.
It really has, which often forces companies into the middle ground, the compromise, a strategic alliance or a joint venture.
This is the corporate marriage.
Exactly. You partner with a local company in the foreign market, you combine your respective competitive strengths.
Perhaps you bring the advanced technology and the capital, and they bring the established local distribution network, political connections, and cultural fluency.
It rapidly facilitates organizational learning for both parties.
But like any marriage, it's messy. The text warns that the cons are significant. You have severely less control than you would with a subsidiary.
There is a very high likelihood of management conflicts as two entirely different corporate cultures try to steer the exact same ship.
And similar to licensing, there is always the persistent threat of proprietary information leaking to your partner, who may one day decide they just don't need you anymore.
All of these geographical and structural decisions are critical, but they are ultimately just blueprints. And this brings us to the final and perhaps the most difficult phase of strategy.
Making it happen. Execution.
Yes.
We have covered the theory. We know our order winners. We've mapped out Porter's matrix. We've brokered a peace treaty between sales and operations. We've figured out our global footprint.
But here's the stark reality. Strategy isn't executed by spreadsheets, and it isn't executed by supply chain mapping software.
No, it is executed by stressed, tired, unpredictable human beings. How do you actually get a massive organization to fundamentally change its behavior without causing a mass burnout event?
The source material pivots here from operational physics to human psychology, specifically introducing John Kotter's behavioral framework.
Right.
It examines human nature through the lens of two profound organizational states: survive mode and thrive mode.
You know, reading this section made me physically wince because it immediately made me realize how many modern corporations essentially hold their employees hostage in a perpetual state of fight or flight just to meet quarterly revenue targets.
It's very common.
The text defines survive mode as our hardwired evolutionary response to threats.
It is the biological mechanism of adrenaline. If a massive new competitor enters your market and slashes prices by 50%, your organization instantly drops into survive mode.
And survive mode is incredibly effective for acute short-term crises. It creates intense, laser-like focus. You stop worrying about 5-year plans and you focus entirely on the fire directly in front of you.
But the framework issues a severe warning here. Survive mode is metabolically expensive.
Right. You can't run on adrenaline forever.
Exactly. If management leads entirely by fear, using performance metrics as a weapon to create a perpetual, artificial state of emergency, the human system breaks down. People burn out. But more insidiously, when a workforce is fixated entirely on surviving threats, they develop severe tunnel vision. They literally lose the cognitive capacity to notice new opportunities.
They are too busy bailing water out of the boat to notice the island right next to them.
That is exactly it. The text argues that while management often relies on forcing survive mode because it gets immediate compliance, true leadership is required to unlock the alternative, thrive mode.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because thrive mode is entirely different energy. It is the human instinct to pursue opportunities. It is characterized by excitement, curiosity, and a deep sense of purpose.
Right.
People operating in thrive mode aren't running away from a terrifying threat. They are sprinting toward an inspiring vision. The text argues that to execute a massive strategic change, you must suppress the survive reflex and systematically empower the thrive instinct.
The theoretical question then becomes, how do you structurally engineer thrive mode inside a massive, rigid legacy corporation?
It feels like trying to plant a delicate garden inside a machine shop.
It really does. But the solution proposed by the source is a profound structural concept called the dual operating system.
I absolutely love this concept. The idea is that you do not tear down the existing corporate hierarchy. You keep the standard org chart. The VPs, the directors, the managers.
Right, because that traditional hierarchy is absolutely necessary for maintaining efficiency, logic, predictability, and managing the day-to-day affairs of the current business.
You can think of the hierarchy as the left brain of the corporation. It is analytical and process-driven, but alongside it, intertwined with it, you intentionally build a new, agile network structure.
This network is the right brain. It operates outside the rigid silos. Its sole focus is entrepreneurial energy, rapid innovation, speed, and seizing massive new opportunities.
It is the engine for large-scale strategic change.
It is essentially trying to incubate a scrappy startup culture inside the belly of the established corporate beast.
And the principles the text outlines for managing this dual system are critical. It requires a broad, diverse internal team. The left and right brains must be inseparable, communicating constantly so the network's innovations can actually be manufactured by the hierarchy.
But my absolute favorite principle regarding this agile network is how it gets staffed.
Yes. The text states that participation must be based on get-to volunteering rather than have-to assignments.
That distinction is the entire secret to unlocking thrive mode. If a CEO points at a mid-level manager and says, "You have been assigned to the new Strategic Innovation Committee, it meets on Thursdays," that manager views it as a chore.
It is a have-to. It is more work piled onto an already stressful job. It generates zero thrive energy.
Exactly. But if leadership paints a vision of the future that is so compelling, so obviously necessary and exciting that people voluntarily raise their hands and say, "I want to help build that," it becomes a get-to.
You are engaging the heart and the head simultaneously.
So how do you actually guide this army of volunteers to institutionalize real change? The text provides Kotter's 8 accelerators.
Instead of just listing them, let's look at how they actually play out in reality. Imagine a legacy manufacturing company that realizes its core product is entering the decline phase, and they need to rapidly pivot to a totally new digital technology. How do the 8 steps save them?
The very first thing leadership has to do is ignite the spark. Step one is finding a big opportunity and creating a genuine sense of urgency around it.
But note that this is not the false, fear-based urgency of survive mode.
No, it is the realization that a massive golden opportunity exists right now, and the window to capture it is closing.
Once that urgency is felt, step 2 kicks in. The leadership team must act as a bulldozer. They have to actively remove obstacles to progress.
If an outdated HR policy or rigid procurement rule is preventing the newly formed volunteer network from testing a prototype quickly, leadership must step in and annihilate that rule. They clear the path.
With the path cleared, step 3 involves nurturing a new network of change agents. You look past the traditional hierarchy.
You find the brilliant, weird innovators buried deep in the IT department, or the junior sales reps who truly understand the new market, and you empower them with authority. You give the Thrive energy a platform.
But the broader organization will still be skeptical, right? The hierarchy will resist the network. So step 4 is critical. Create quick wins.
The network cannot disappear into a lab for 2 years. They need to rapidly launch one small, undeniable success, a minor product feature, a faster internal process, to prove the new strategy actually works.
Quick wins build undeniable momentum and silence the internal critics.
And you leverage that momentum for step 5, clearly communicating a vision and focusing the entire organization on the most inspiring initiatives. The quick win proves it's possible. The vision shows where it's ultimately going.
Step 6 is relentless pursuit. You do not declare victory after one quick win. You immediately look for the next opportunity, find the next team of volunteers, and tackle the next bottleneck.
You build a relentless cadence of success that just overwhelms the old way of doing things.
Which naturally leads to step 7, creating an army of volunteers. As the wins pile up and the vision becomes reality, that initial small network expands. The get-to energy becomes infectious.
Employees throughout the rigid hierarchy see the exciting work happening in the network and actively seek to join it.
And finally, the end game. Step 8, incorporating the initiatives and institutionalizing the change. The new innovative processes developed by the Agile network are formally adopted by the traditional hierarchy.
The new way of doing things simply becomes the standard operating procedure.
To tie it all the way back to the beginning of our deep dive, the new innovative order winners developed by the Agile network eventually just become the standard order qualifiers managed by the hierarchy. The cycle completes and the organization survives the shift.
We have covered an immense, almost overwhelming amount of ground today.
We really have. We started at the theoretical edge of the push-pull frontier. We mapped out corporate battlefields using Porter's matrix. We waded into the civil war of functional departments.
We debated global geographical strategy, and we ended in the deep psychology of human burnout and organizational change.
If we synthesize everything we've pulled from this source material, the ultimate takeaway is that you cannot decouple business strategy from supply chain reality.
They're exactly the same thing. A successful supply chain isn't just about negotiating cheaper freight rates or moving boxes from point A to point B. It is a continuous, unbroken chain of logic.
It seamlessly links the customer's deepest shifting desires, those critical order winners, all the way back through international facility decisions, cross-functional harmony, and the psychological state of the humans doing the work.
If your people are trapped in survive mode, your beautifully designed best cost strategy will fail, no matter how flawless the math looks in the boardroom.
Think about your own organization right now as you're listening to this. Look closely at the specific metrics your department is being judged on. Are you inadvertently at war with another department down the hall because your KPIs are mathematically opposed?
Is finance forcing decisions that actively destroy your customer service ratings?
And look at your own daily reality. Are you operating in a constant, exhausting state of survive mode, just fighting fires to hit a target? Or are you engaged in thrive mode, chasing an opportunity you actually believe in?
It's a huge distinction.
The next time you prepare for a major strategic meeting, don't just look at the marketing plan or the sales projections. Look beneath the surface. Look at exactly where your push-pull frontier lies. Evaluate whether you are trying to be a broad, low-cost provider while accidentally running a supply chain built for a bespoke differentiator.
You have to know your battlefield.
But here is one final provocative thought to leave you with, something the text only begins to hint at. Artificial intelligence. As AI algorithms become increasingly capable of instantly, perfectly predicting human demand, that push-pull frontier we spent so much time discussing is going to violently shift.
Oh, without a doubt.
In the near future, the boundary between forecasting and knowing will blur. Over the next 5 years, companies won't just be competing on who has the most efficient factory. They will be competing on whose algorithms can pull that frontier closest to the customer's brain, anticipating the order before the customer even realizes they want it.
Keep a very close eye on how AI rewrites the physics of this invisible matrix.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We respect your time, and we congratulate you on taking a sledgehammer to the drywall and gaining a massive shortcut to strategic fluency today. Until next time, keep looking beneath the surface.